My perfect brother and his fiancée demanded my college fund for their lavish wedding. When my dad said, "It's not like you'll ever amount to anything," I smiled, transferred every dollar, and walked into the ceremony holding the one envelope that could ruin everything. I, 24M, watched my father hand over my entire college fund to my brother without even asking me. The money I'd been promised since I was 12, the $50,000 that was supposed to secure my future, disappeared in one conversation over dinner. My brother needed it for his wedding venue, my father explained, because apparently a country club reception was more important than my education. The betrayal hit harder than the financial loss. My brother sat there smirking while his fiancée gushed about Italian marble floors and crystal chandeliers. When I tried to protest, my father cut me off with words that burned themselves into my memory. He told me it wasn't like I'd ever amount to anything anyway, that my brother had real potential, real prospects. The golden child deserved golden treatment. I smiled and nodded, congratulated them on their engagement, and excused myself early. Nobody questioned it. They were too busy planning their fairy tale wedding to notice the look in my eyes. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. The next morning, I drove to the bank and opened my own account. I transferred every remaining dollar from my personal savings, about $3,000 I'd earned from part-time jobs. Then I did something that felt both terrifying and liberating. I took out a student loan for the maximum amount possible, using my college acceptance letter as collateral. The loan officer was sympathetic to my situation, and within a week, I had access to funds that would cover my first 2 years of education. But that wasn't enough. I needed more than just survival money. I needed leverage. My brother had always been careless with information. Growing up in the same house, I'd overheard countless phone conversations, seen documents left on kitchen counters, witnessed arguments between him and his fiancée when they thought nobody was listening. The golden child had secrets, and some of them were darker than my parents realized. 3 weeks before the wedding, I started my research in earnest. Social media was a goldmine. His fiancée posted everything online, and through her tagged photos and location check-ins, I pieced together a timeline that made my stomach turn. The affair had been going on for 8 months before they announced their engagement. The other person was married, had children, and worked at the same company where my brother had his internship. I took screenshots, compiled dates, cross-referenced social media posts with credit card statements I found in my father's office. The evidence painted a picture of deception that went far deeper than anyone suspected. The wedding venue deposit had been paid for by my brother's affair partner, not my college fund. The expensive ring, the elaborate bachelor party, the designer dress for his fiancée, all funded by money that came from somewhere my parents would find morally reprehensible. But I needed something more concrete, something that couldn't be dismissed as circumstantial evidence. The opportunity came during a family dinner 2 weeks before the wedding. My brother's fiancée was showing off wedding favors when her phone rang. She stepped outside to take the call, leaving her purse on the kitchen counter. Her laptop bag was right next to it, partially unzipped. Inside, I could see the corner of a manila folder. I excused myself to use the bathroom and made a detour through the kitchen. The folder contained bank statements, text message printouts, and photographs that confirmed everything I'd suspected. More importantly, it contained a signed confession letter she'd apparently written to her own family, explaining the truth about their relationship and the wedding funding. She'd never intended to send it, but she'd written it anyway, perhaps as a way to process her guilt. I photographed everything with my phone, returned the folder to her bag, and rejoined the family dinner as if nothing had happened. The wedding day arrived with all the pomp and circumstance my father's money could buy. The country club was decorated with white roses and gold accents, exactly as my brother's fiancée had dreamed. Guests filled the manicured lawn, champagne flowed freely, and the photographer captured every moment of their perfect day. I arrived early, dressed in my best suit, carrying a simple white envelope that contained printouts of every piece of evidence I'd gathered. Bank statements showing the true source of their wedding funds, screenshots of compromising text messages, photographs that would destroy reputations and end marriages. Everything my golden brother had built his new life on, ready to crumble with one revelation. But I didn't plan to destroy the wedding. Not yet. Instead, I approached my brother during the cocktail hour, when he was surrounded by college friends and distant relatives. I pulled him aside near the rose garden, away from the crowd, but still visible to wedding guests. I told him I knew about the affair, about the money, about the lies he'd built his engagement on. I watched his face change from confusion to fear to anger in the span of 30 seconds. He tried to deny it at first, then demanded to know what I wanted. I explained my terms calmly and quietly. I wanted my college fund returned, with interest, within 60 days. I wanted a public apology to me and our family for taking money that was never his to claim. And I wanted him to tell our parents the truth about where the wedding funding really came from. He laughed at first, called me delusional, said I was jealous and desperate. I pulled out my phone and showed him one of the photographs. His laughter died instantly. He asked what would happen if he refused my demands. I told him I'd walk into the reception, request the microphone during toasts, and share some interesting financial information with all their wedding guests. His affair partner's spouse was in attendance, along with several of his fiancée's family members who had strong religious convictions about adultery. The color drained from his face. He tried to negotiate, asked if we could discuss this after the honeymoon, suggested alternative arrangements. I told him he had until the end of the reception to give me an answer. The ceremony proceeded without incident. My brother fumbled his vows slightly, his hands shaking as he slipped the ring onto his fiancée's finger, but most guests attributed his nervousness to wedding day jitters. I sat in the back row, the envelope resting on my lap, watching their fairy tale unfold. During the reception, I mingled with guests, ate the expensive catered food that my college fund had helped pay for, and waited. My brother kept glancing in my direction, his jaw clenched, his new wife completely oblivious to the tension crackling between us. The toast segment approached. The best man spoke first, sharing embarrassing college stories and expressing confidence in my brother's character. My father followed, talking proudly about his successful son and beautiful new daughter-in-law, about the bright future ahead of them. Then the microphone was offered to other family members. This was my moment. I stood up, walked to the front of the reception area, and accepted the microphone from the DJ. The room fell quiet, all eyes on me. My brother's face had gone completely white. His fiancée smiled expectantly, probably anticipating a heartfelt brotherly tribute. I began by talking about family, about trust, about the bonds that hold us together through difficult times. I mentioned how proud I was of my brother's success, how impressed I was by the beautiful venue and elegant ceremony. The guests murmured approval, some raising their glasses in anticipation of a toast. Then I paused, looked directly at my brother, and made my choice. I told the crowd that family meant supporting each other's dreams, that my brother had always been someone I looked up to, and that I was grateful for the example he'd set throughout our lives. I raised my glass and proposed a toast to the happy couple. The room erupted in applause. My brother looked confused, then relieved, then suspicious. I handed the microphone back to the DJ and returned to my seat, the envelope still tucked under my arm. 20 minutes later, my brother approached me near the dessert table. He asked why I hadn't exposed him, what my game was, whether I was planning to blackmail him indefinitely. I told him I'd realized something during his ceremony. Destroying his wedding wouldn't get my college fund back. It wouldn't undo my father's cruel words or change the family dynamics that had shaped our entire lives. All it would do is cause pain to innocent people who had nothing to do with our conflict. But that didn't mean I was giving up on justice. Instead, I handed him a business card for a private investigator I'd hired the previous week. The PI had been documenting the affair independently, building a case that could be presented to my brother's employer and his affair partner's spouse. The investigation would conclude in 60 days, and the results would be shared with all relevant parties unless certain conditions were met. My brother stared at the card, his hands trembling. He asked what I wanted from him. I repeated my original demands. College fund returned with interest, public apology to the family, truth disclosed to our parents. But I added one more condition. I wanted him to fund my education completely, not just return what was originally mine, but pay for all 4 years plus graduate school, if I chose to pursue it. He protested that he didn't have that kind of money, that the wedding had cost a fortune, that his new job wouldn't cover such an expense. I reminded him about his creative financing methods and suggested he could be equally creative in finding ways to honor our agreement. The reception continued around us, guests dancing and celebrating while we negotiated the terms of our family's future. His fiancée approached at one point, asking if everything was okay, sensing the tension despite our controlled voices. My brother assured her we were just having a brotherly chat, that everything was fine. She smiled and returned to the dance floor, completely unaware that her marriage was already balanced on a knife's edge. Update 1. The 60-day deadline came and went without my brother meeting any of my demands. He'd tested my resolve, probably hoping I was bluffing about the private investigator. He was wrong. The PI's report landed on multiple doorsteps the same morning. My brother's affair partner's spouse received a comprehensive folder documenting 8 months of infidelity. My brother's employer received evidence of financial impropriety and misuse of company resources. My parents received bank statements showing the true source of their son's wedding funding. The fallout was swift and brutal. My brother's affair partner was served with divorce papers within a week. The custody battle was vicious, with the children caught in the middle of accusations and recriminations. My brother's name appeared in court documents as a correspondent, effectively ending any chance of maintaining his professional reputation. His employer launched an internal investigation that revealed my brother had been using company credit cards for personal expenses, including romantic getaways with his affair partner. He was terminated immediately, his professional references destroyed, his career prospects in that industry essentially eliminated. My parents' reaction was the most satisfying part of the entire ordeal. My father, who had dismissed me as worthless, now had to confront the reality that his golden child was a liar, a cheat, and a thief. The disappointment in his eyes when he called to tell me about the revelations was worth every moment of pain I'd endured. My brother's marriage lasted 6 months. His fiancée discovered the extent of his deception gradually, through social media, mutual friends, and eventually through direct contact with his affair partner's ex-spouse. The annulment proceedings were finalized before their first anniversary. But I wasn't finished yet. Update 2. Using the leverage I'd gained from the scandal, I approached my father with a proposal. My brother owed significant debts from the failed marriage, legal fees, and his inability to find employment. The family's reputation had been damaged by the public nature of his disgrace. I offered a solution that would benefit everyone involved. I would use my evidence to help rebuild my brother's life, providing character references and financial support, if my father agreed to fund my education completely and publicly acknowledge the mistake he'd made in choosing favorites. Additionally, I wanted my brother to work for me once he got back on his feet, in a business I was planning to start with my newfound financial backing. My father, faced with the choice between supporting the son he'd dismissed and watching his golden child continue to spiral downward, chose pragmatism over pride. The college fund was restored with compound interest. My graduate school was fully funded. And most importantly, I received the apology I'd been waiting for my entire life. My brother, humbled by his circumstances and desperate for any kind of stability, agreed to work in the consulting business I established after graduation. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. The worthless son was now the employer, and the golden child was grateful to have any job at all. The envelope I'd carried into that wedding ceremony had contained the power to destroy lives, but I'd chosen to use it as a tool for reconstruction instead. Sometimes revenge isn't about burning everything down. Sometimes it's about building something better from the ashes of other people's mistakes. I kept that envelope as a reminder of the moment I chose my own path over the one my family had tried to force me down. It sits in my office now, next to my college diploma and my graduate degree, proof that being underestimated can be the greatest gift of all. My brother learned humility the hard way, but he learned it completely. My father learned that worth isn't determined by favoritism or expectations, but by character and perseverance. And I learned that sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to let other people's opinions define your potential. The family dynamics that had shaped my childhood were permanently altered, but not in the destructive way I'd originally planned. Instead of tearing us apart, the truth had forced us to rebuild our relationships on more honest ground. My brother and I would never be close in the traditional sense, but we developed a working relationship based on mutual respect rather than sibling rivalry. My father and I reconciled slowly, through shared business interests and his genuine efforts to make amends for years of dismissive treatment. The golden child pedestal was dismantled permanently, replaced by a more equitable recognition of each son's individual strengths and contributions. Looking back, I realized that walking into that wedding ceremony with evidence of my brother's deception was the easy part. The real challenge was deciding how to use that power responsibly, how to seek justice without becoming the kind of person I'd always resented. The envelope gave me leverage, but wisdom taught me how to use it constructively. That's the difference between revenge and justice. Revenge seeks to destroy, but justice seeks to restore balance. I got everything I wanted: my education, my father's respect, my brother's acknowledgement of wrongdoing, without destroying the lives of innocent people or becoming consumed by bitterness. The golden child fell from grace, but he was given the opportunity to rebuild himself on more solid ground. The dismissed son rose to prominence, but he used his success to elevate others rather than crush his former oppressors. And the family that had been built on favoritism and false expectations learned to function as a team, each member contributing their unique strengths to collective success. Sometimes the best stories don't end with dramatic explosions or devastating revelations. Sometimes they end with quiet victories, patient reconstruction, and the satisfaction of proving that underestimation can be transformed into motivation. The envelope I carried that day contained the power to end my brother's happiness, but I chose to use it to begin my own instead.